welcome back to my channel for day 17 of Vlogmas. This is technically going up on day 18 because yesterday was absolute insanity for me. I graded 200 papers over the course of 14 hours and I was just so busy doing that I couldn't even think about vlogging, and then we decided to go to a birthday party for our really good friend. Not saying that like Vlogmas is an obligatory thing, but I didn't want to stress myself out more by putting together and throwing together like a haphazard vlog yesterday, or a vlog rather. So I decided to just film a vlog today, and I'll film a vlog later in the evening, and then I'll post that for tomorrow. But today what I wanted to talk about is something that is highly requested all the time. Today is a book recommendations or my favorite books video. It's hashtag ohitfits feminism. Underneath that hashtag, you can find all kinds of book recommendations. So some of these books are nonfiction, some of these books are fiction, but all of them kind of revolve around this theme of identity, or figuring out your place in society, or breaking down constructs of social expectations. It's something that I'm very interested in, so I read a lot about it. So I wanted to start with my favorite book of the past, I don't know, probably 5-10 years, at least my favorite nonfiction book, and it is this. The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander is probably one of the most essential texts that I've read in years. This book is kind of a tracing of mass incarceration in our society, and also slavery and Jim Crow laws in our society, and how mass incarceration today is the new Jim Crow. It is slavery institutionalized. I do want to mention, and this is something that Michelle Alexander actually writes in her preface, and I think it's important and I want to read it here. She says, "This book is not for everyone. I have a specific audience in mind, people who care deeply about racial justice, but who, for any number of reasons, do not yet appreciate the magnitude of the crisis faced by communities of color as a result of mass incarceration. In other words, I am writing this book for people like me, the person I was 10 years ago. I am writing it for another audience, those who have been struggling to persuade their friends, neighbors, relatives, teachers, co-workers, or political representatives that something is eerily familiar about the way that our criminal justice system operates, something that looks and feels a lot like an era we supposedly left behind, but who have lacked the facts and data to back up their claims. It is my hope and prayer that this book empowers you and allows you to speak your truth with greater conviction, credibility, and courage. Last but not least, I am writing this book for all those trapped within America's latest caste system. You may be locked up or locked out of mainstream society, but you are not forgotten." So I think that basically encompasses this book and its importance, and Michelle Alexander so beautifully traces with facts and data the ways in which mass incarceration disproportionately affects communities of color, and how it represents really horrible things about our society that we oftentimes push to the wayside and ignore. So if you're interested in racial justice, please pick up The New Jim Crow. Again, this is an essential text, especially if you're interested in intersectional feminism. This is a place where you need to start. To go along with that theme, especially that Black Lives Matter, I think it's important to read sort of a memoir or a personal narrative that shows the experiences of a person of color, especially growing up Black in America. I think that ta-nehisi Coates in general, everything that he's written, especially for The Atlantic, has been so important to me to get kind of a first-hand account. And this man writes beautifully, his prose is gorgeous. This is Between the World and Me, which is technically a letter to his son about being Black in America, about growing up Black in America. And ta-nehisi Coates kind of traces his history and his childhood in Baltimore, Maryland, and the ways in which he saw friends of his shot down by police officers, or how he saw those around him kind of suffering from the plight of racism. This is such a fabulous, intellectual, really poignant and beautiful piece. So again, a really essential text. I won't give too much away, but again, I can read from the book cover a little bit. It says, "In a profound work that pivots from the biggest questions about American history and ideals to the most intimate concerns of a father for his son, ta-nehisi Coates offers a powerful new framework for understanding our nation's history and current crisis." Okay, so moving on to some of my more feminist-themed texts. I think that most people, when they think of feminism, they think of contemporary feminism. So we're talking about Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, or we think about Judith Butler oftentimes. But I think for us to really look at feminism, a really great place to start is Cave Chopin. and Kate Chopin wrote a selection of short stories, and this is, in particular, my favorite one is in this. It's called The Awakening. These are what people would argue are proto-feminist texts, where a woman awakens and finds that she wants a new life, that she doesn't want to be a housewife, and the commentary here on women's role in society is really important. So if you're looking for some origins of feminism, especially in fiction texts, Kate Chopin would be a really great place to start. And speaking of women's roles in society and the myths that we buy into, these two texts are so important. So this one is called The Beauty Myth, and it's by Naomi Wolf, and this one is called The Purity Myth, and it's written by Jessica Valenti. And both of these things trace different aspects of women's roles in society, in particular how images are used in the media, especially images of beauty are used in the media against women, hyper dieting masses, and this expectation of fitting into a physical mold. And then you have the purity myth, which is a psychological mold that women are buying into or are told to buy into. Jessica Valenti, sort of the cover, it says here, how America's obsession with virginity is hurting young women. So this idea of being pure, especially being a pure kind of piece of cattle that can be given to someone else in a marriage ritual. I can again read from the book cover for this one. It says, the United States is obsessed with virginity. From the media to schools to government agencies, the purity myth is an important and timely critique about why this is so and why it's problematic for girls and women. Analyzing cultural stereotypes and media messages, Jessica Valenti reveals the overt and hidden ways our society links a young woman's worth to her sexuality rather than to values like honesty, kindness, and altruism. And this is such an interesting text. I remember one of the details that Jessica Valenti brings up is this idea of placing sex on such a pedestal that we oftentimes have this ideal of it, and that there's no way to actually get up onto that pedestal. And so you're constantly feeling like you lack worth. I mean, if your entire worth is based upon how pure you are, and that pedestal is too hard for you to reach, then you're kind of shit out of luck. And Jessica Valenti kind of traces the psychological trauma that happens for young women that are expected to be pure and are not deemed so by societal standards. The beauty myth is such an essential text. I think most people in general have read this text or they've heard about it. There's all kinds of topics that Naomi Wolf brings up, and she actually does talk about sex here too, but she talks about culture, and she talks about work, and she talks about hunger and what it means to diet. Really, really interesting ideas. I think this was published years and years ago. And there's been new editions since. I think this one is from 1992. But Naomi Wolf in general has kind of updated this over time, especially as we see media changing, and like in an increasingly technologized world, we see digital media and social media changing perceptions of women in society. So some of the ideas here are maybe a bit antiquated because it's from several years ago, but I think that a lot of the notions still stand true. If you're looking for feminist texts that are more creative, these are the two texts then that I would recommend. So this one is All About Love, New Visions by Bell Hooks, and yes, her entire name is spelled in lowercase letters. And Bell Hooks, she's written a lot, but this book in particular is meditations on love and different types of love, different concepts. She meditates on grace, on clarity, on justice, on honesty, values, greed, and the list goes on and on and on. And so she looks at our contemporary society and she thinks about the wounds that we have, and in particular the wounds that women have without love in our society. This book is so beautiful, and it traces both narcissism and selfishness of our society and the hope and the idealistic hope, I guess, the ambition for renewed love. And that usually, at least for Bell Hooks in this text, comes through dialogue and communication and by openness and being vulnerable. Something that I've thought a lot on. I think it's something that's actually impacted and definitely made better my own relationship by me meditating on these things. So again, a really, really great text. Going back to Rupi Kaur's Milk and Honey, again, a text that I think a lot of people have read. This is full of beautiful, beautiful poetry. I can just read one for you here. She says, "He only whispers I love you as he slips his hands down the waistband of your pants. This is where you must understand the difference between want and need. You may want that boy, but you certainly don't need him." So some really kind of autonomous and powerful words. Some other things, let's see. You treat them like they have a heart like yours, but not everyone can be as soft and as tender. You don't see the person they are, you see the person they have the potential to be. You give and give till they pull everything out of you and leave you empty. So not only does Rupi Kaur meditate on relationships, but she often meditates on self-worth and self-love and also mental health. Something to understand though too about this book is that this book in particular is written for women of color. And so some of the meditations, though they are important and beautiful, they're oftentimes not written for people that look like me. They're written for people who have beautiful shades of skin that are darker than mine, and all of the implications and all of the kind of consequences that oftentimes come with that in terms of self-love and how those women are seen in society and so on. But Rupi Kaur breaks up all these meditations, all these different types of prose and poetry into 4 different categories: the hurting, the loving, the breaking, the healing. So again, a beautiful collection of poems. I recommend that you pick this up. Okay, and a final text, and I've already mentioned this in a previous video before, but it's this one, and this is called Little Red Riding Hood Uncloaked: Sex, Morality, and Evolution. And the Evolution of a Fairy Tale. It's by Catherine Ornstein. And I've discussed this again previously, but this is for those of you who are like me, who are interested in critical theory. So Catherine Ornstein, she traces the myth of Little Red Riding Hood throughout society, and she looks at how all of these myths of the young girl, the young innocent girl, impact the ways in which we view women in fairy tales and in fiction pieces. And she looks at kind of the historical context of this, and again, I've discussed this in a previous video, but again, just another one of my favorite books. So I hope that this video was useful. I know that a lot of people ask me about what are my favorite books, and these are the things that I always mention, but I figured that I would throw them into a video so you can actually hear me talk about them rather than just going searching for them through the hashtag. I've actually done a blog post about this too, but I think that people are interested in equipping themselves with knowledge. I always tell you guys that's so important. If you want to know more about the world around you, you've got to read. You have to equip yourself with knowledge so that then you can refer to those things and have conversations and have dialogue, and then that knowledge ends up spreading. If you are interested in any of these texts and you pick them up, please let me know. Let me know how you like them. Let me know how they impact you. I love to have a book club. It's something that we tried to do. One of the books that I did not include in this video was Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay, because I've talked so extensively about it in the past, and that's a series of different essays all about feminism and intersectionality and race and so on and so forth. I tried to have a book club with that before in my Periscope 50 group, and it kind of just did not work out. But it is something that I would still be open and interested in doing. So if there is one book in particular that people are really interested in and they'd like me to read it alongside them, and we could post questions and we could have journals about it, I think that'd be something that'd be really fun. So let me know if you're interested in that. And I will see you guys in tomorrow's vlog, but I'm gonna film it later today for day 18. Love you guys. Bye.